Hi everyone, and welcome to the Deakin Alumni and Deakin Child Study Centre webinar with Dr Nicole Papadopoulos. My name is Farisha Rahman from the Central Alumni Relations team. Today we're broadcasting from the Burwood campus, and our webinar topic today is Getting Children Moving for Healthy Development and Wellbeing, the Australian Joy of Moving program, presented by Dr Nicole Papadopoulos. Dr Nicole Papadopoulos is a clinical psychologist and lead senior research fellow on the Australian Joy of Moving program. Nicole completed her PhD in 2003, pioneering work that explored the impact of physical activity on mental health outcomes for children with neurodevelopmental disorders, and she is an emerging leader in the sleep and motor research industry. Clinically, Nicole specialises in neurodevelopmental disorders such as autism and ADHD, and she's passionate about helping children to reach their full potential using evidence-based interventions. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nicole. I'm going to pass over to you now to begin our webinar session today.
Thanks, Farisha, and good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to thank our research partners, School Sports Victoria and Professor Caterina Pesce from the University of Rome, who have generously supported this project and are pivotal to the research that I'm going to be talking about here today. I'd also like to say thank you to our philanthropic donors, the Ferrero Group Australia, as part of its Kinder Plus Sport pillar of their corporate social responsibility, who generously provided funding for the research project. And I want to declare that the Ferrero Group Australia have no role in this research, including the collection, analysis and interpretation of the data and writing up of the research. So today what I want to do is give a brief overview of the Deakin Child Study Centre and the types of research that we invest in and that's being conducted in our centre. Talk a little bit about the importance of movement for child development, and then dive into the International Joy of Moving methodology, as well as some of the programs that are out there promoting movement in primary schools, and then end with the Australian Joy of Moving program and talk to you a little bit about what we're developing here at Deakin and what we're piloting and pioneering in this space. So the Deakin Child Study Centre was established in 2013 and has a focus on understanding child development and helping children to reach their full potential. We are a multidisciplinary centre and we bring together expertise from the disciplines of neuroscience, education, physiotherapy and information technology, all within the hub of the School of Psychology here at Burwood. We have strong collaborations with other universities in Australia, such as Melbourne Uni, Charles Darwin University in the Northern Territory and the University of Sydney, as well as international links in the US and India. We also have strong links with research institutes such as the Murdoch Children's Research Institute and leading hospitals such as the Royal Children's Hospital. The Deakin Child Study Centre has three arms. Our first pillar is around neuroscience and is focused on research to characterise or understand some of the difficulties that children with neurodevelopmental disorders experience. Our second pillar is around treatment of common problems children may encounter, such as sleep problems or anxiety disorders. The third pillar is around our partnerships with industry to work with children in the community and educational settings, as well as sporting environments to improve child wellbeing. We have strong partnerships with peak bodies such as the AFL, Department of Education, School Sports Victoria, which enable us to develop resources for the communities at the grassroots. So the Deakin Child Study Centre research that we're conducting is based on a few guiding principles. The first is evidence-based. So all of the resources that we developed are backed by evidence and research and are evaluated using gold standard research methodology. We take a strengths-based approach in achieving our vision to transform the lives of children and help them to reach their full potential. Most of the research that's been conducted over the past decade or so has taken a deficit approach when researching children, and in particular children who experience developmental challenges or disabilities. And treatments or interventions have been really focused on decreasing the negative symptoms that these children may experience. The programs that we're developing here at the Deakin Child Study Centre are based on a positive youth development theory, where children are seen as resources to be developed and not problems to be fixed. So the programs that we develop are therefore focused on unique strengths of each child and creating resilience. Our research is also focused on real inclusion. So we ensure that every program we develop is inclusive of all children, and in particular our 1 in 5 Australian children who experience a developmental challenge. Lastly, our research is based on strengthening the capacity of communities, whether it be the school community or the sporting community, to ensure that the research makes a real difference on the ground to transform the lives of children. So now I want to shift to talk a little bit about the importance of movement and why, as psychologists, we are so interested in movement and how this can help with our well-being. So movement occurs in the first year of life before we learn to speak or communicate meaningfully. It allows us to explore the world from a young age and can be a way that we express ourselves. As we grow and learn through movement in early childhood, we learn the rituals and expectations of our culture through movement. And this is particularly evident in some populations, such as the Indigenous community. Brain science now recognises that movement is fundamental to psychological and social development, structuring the first sense of self and enabling learning about the world. Movement also provides the opportunity for children to develop motor skills or motor competence, which has been found to play a role in the psychological and social functioning. And I want to talk a little bit now about the overlapping brain circuitry for movement as well as social, emotional or psychological functioning. So since the beginning of my research career, roughly 10 years ago, I have been interested in movement and the impact of movement on children's social, emotional and behavioural development. My PhD was focused on understanding the neural underpinnings of children with neurodevelopmental disorders, for example, children who have autism or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and how the motor problems were related to the attentional, social and emotional difficulties that these children commonly experience. What was fascinating was the interrelationship between all of these and how movement could predict or was associated with the severity of psychopathology. So children who had more motor problems also had more social difficulties, perhaps because they weren't engaging in physical activity, so they weren't practicing the motor skills. All the social problems were keeping them away from engaging. And children with ADHD who also had motor problems went on to have difficulties with sustaining attention, which is a core deficit of ADHD. So what came out of this research studies was the importance of movement for children's development and the downstream effects this may have on children's well-being. Being the decade of the brain, there was a series of studies that documented the brain circuitry and brain regions such as the cerebellum, and how deficits to a common area of the brain or circuitry was found to underlie a cluster of different symptoms or psychopathologies, such as motor problems, emotional problems, or attentional problems. What also became evident is that development in movement or a focus on movement for children could also lead to downstream positive effects for children and may have the potential to increase children's social, emotional, attentional or academic development or aspects of the whole child. So fast forward to now to more recent research, we've seen the development of interventions focused on promoting movement that have been shown to impact aspects of the whole child, including their physical, motor and cognitive development. And I'd like to now introduce the Joy of Moving philosophy and methodology that was developed by the Kinder Plus Sports team in collaboration with Professor Caterina Pesce at the University of Rome. So the Joy of Moving methodology is an original and innovative methodology that is the result of a 3-year research project which encouraged movement in children in order to promote and inspire positive lifestyle habits, which hopefully will last into adulthood. The educational model emphasises the impact of physical activity on the whole child, and you can see from the gyroscope on the slide that all of these facets are overlap and are interrelated in some shape or form. The Joy of Moving program was developed in Italy for the Italian curriculum, and was designed as an enriched school physical activity program, and consisted of 4 teaching modules lasting 6 weeks and resulting in a total of 24 intervention sessions. So children engaged in a series of carefully designed games and modules. And the greatest innovation of the Joy of Moving method is the development and the involvement of children in a fun, non-competitive approach to physical activity, and offering children endless variations of play to develop abilities of the whole child. The games are varied, they're made novel, and there's an increase in the challenge point reached so that the games remain stimulating, fun, and enjoyable. So an outcome of the method of the Joy of Moving methodology was the manual, which is divided into 2 parts. The first explains the theory and conceptual framework of the method, and the second includes 80 cards covering different games categorised by specific age groups. And there are 4 different domains: the physical fitness domain, the motor coordination domain, the creativity and cognitive function domain, and the life skills domain. And an online version was also put together, so short videos of how to administer these movement tasks are available for teachers to access, and this can be for PE teachers and also generalist teachers. So there's a really nice user-friendly website that was a translational component of the original Joy of Moving program. So I just want to touch on some of the learnings of Professor Caterina Pesce's work. And the first is that there's an emphasis on children's right to play and be physically active, and a holistic perspective on healthy personal development. And this fits very nicely with the strengths-based approach that our research is focused on here at the Deakin Child Study Centre. It was also said that physical activity has wider benefits than just fixing obesity rates, and that this framing is really restrictive and negatively framed. So thinking about physical activity and promoting physical activity for holistic development is the way to go, and not so fixated on reducing obesity levels or just increasing physical activity for the sake of being active. Caterina Pesce also emphasised that there is a need for research to translate some of the evidence-based results that we're seeing when we look at the interrelationships between physical activity or movement and emotional, psychological and cognitive improvements to child-specific health promotion practice. So again, this aligns very nicely with the Deakin Child Study guiding principles for our research to be out there in the community and translated so that kids are engaging in these programs and are reaping the benefits of it. So going from what we're seeing sort of in the research world or in the lab to something that can make a difference in the community. So there's a real shift in focus, if you like, with the program and the original methodology, Joy of Moving methodology, to focus on coming up with movement tasks and games that are novel. Diversity is really expressed, so making sure that kids have a range of different activities that they can engage in, thinking about effort and keeping kids stimulating, and successfulness as being key ingredients for promoting the brain plasticity and the cognitive development that we are seeing through the physical activity. There's also a need for physical activity promotion to look more, should look at more than just how much physical activity, to a shift to what kind of physical activity kids are engaging in. And we want children to go beyond simply moving to moving with thought and understanding and realising why movement is important for us. And as I said, executive function, which is a fancy way of talking about thinking and our cognitive processing skills, has been found to be improved by a combination of physical, emotional and social challenges. And this is a bit of a paradigm shift, if you like, from a lot of the mainstream sort of thinking around academic performance being linked to the amount of hours that we study and that we sit at the desk. So it's really thinking about how all of these little different domains come together and come into play to improve academic outcomes. And some schools have grasped onto this better than others. So from Italy to Australia, we have partnered with Professor Caterina Pesce and thought about how we can bring this Joy of Moving methodology here to Australia and starting with Victoria. There's definitely a clear need to move children in Australia and to develop positive lifestyle habits, especially in today's world where children are less active and more sedentary. So I just want to talk a little bit about the national guidelines. So the Australian National Guidelines recommend 60 minutes of physical activity every day, and this should incorporate an array of activities. So it's not only your moderate to vigorous physical activity, but it also includes your light or leisurely aerobic tasks and strengths-based activities, if you like, so your resistance training. It's also recommended that we try and reduce the sedentary behaviours or break up the sitting time for kids. If we have a look at some of the programs out there at promoting physical activity, there seems to be a missed opportunity on getting children moving for healthy development and wellbeing, with most of the programs focused on the physical aspects of movement. And we are definitely not seeing that children are meeting the recommended guidelines, especially children who experience developmental challenges or disabilities, with research showing that they're 4.5 times more inactive than their typically developing peers. And those statistics are huge. What I want to do now is just talk a little bit about some anecdotal evidence that I see in the clinic. So being a clinical psychologist, I also work clinically with children who experience emotional and behavioural problems. And I'm actually astounded by how many families and children that I see don't realise the importance of the mind-body connection or the benefits of movement for their emotional well-being. Clinically, we know that when we're exercising, the physiology of the brain changes. There's a release of neurochemicals, neurotransmitters, and hormones are altered, and this has a profound effect on the way that we feel. So the first thing I prescribe when I see my clients is regular physical activity and a focus on any movement. Even a regular, gentle, leisurely walk can be effective for our mental health. But as I said, I'm confronted time and time again with patients who not only don't exercise, but most importantly are not educated as to the reasons why physical activity is important for their mental health. So there's a clear need for this public health message to be emphasised and for the promotion of the importance of movement for wellbeing at a young age. And it's really important to take a preventative approach, because by the time families get into the clinic, they're already experiencing significant emotional and behavioural disturbance that's keeping them from living their lives to their full potential. And so there are also lots of children out there who, if we like, are experiencing subclinical emotional and behavioural disturbances that get missed. So I want to share some stats around the prevalence of mental illness. By 2020, mental illness will account for 15% of burden of disease globally, identifying it as a major public health concern. 1 in 7 children, adolescents aged 4 to 17 years have suffered a mental health disorder, and this is equivalent to approximately 560,000 Australian children and adolescents. So these figures are significant. So schools, and particularly in the classroom, have been targeted as the ideal setting to deliver health promotion interventions, given the potential reach of children, as children spend the majority of their time at school. In line with this, there's been a plethora of primary school physical activity interventions, such as the Take 10 program, Active Classrooms and Transform Us, typically aimed at increasing children's time spent doing moderate to vigorous physical activity or decreasing sedentary behaviour or sitting time. Likewise, mental health interventions have been prevalent among schools, targeting the wellbeing of students, such as the Mindfulness in Schools program, Bite Back and Family Wellbeing. Whilst both these streams of interventions are equally important, very few interventions emphasise the importance of physical activity for psychological wellbeing or emphasise this mind-body connection. And that's something unique that we hope to bring to the Joy of Moving methodology that originated in Italy. So in April this year, we held an advisory board to come together with key experts from the fields of psychology, education, physical education, principals and teachers of mainstream and specialist schools to seek expert advice in developing the Australian Joy of Moving program to promote movement and healthy development in primary school age children here in Victoria, and in particular to contextualise the methodology of the original methodology of the Joy of Moving program for the Victorian curriculum. So the advice we got was that the program needed to be designed and delivered by the classroom teachers. So in contrast to the original program that was delivered in Italy by PE teachers, the advice we were given were PE teachers are already really busy trying to cram in their curriculum into the 1 hour of PE that primary school age children do in a week. And so it's the classroom teacher's responsibility also to be thinking about how they can incorporate physical activity in the form of active breaks during the school day. The intervention, we needed to think about it being brief and no longer than 10 minutes because the curriculum's crowded for all teachers, including the classroom teacher. We needed to ensure that it was in line with the Victorian curriculum and the national priority targets of physical activity and also happy, healthy and resilient kids. We needed to think about sustainability and delivery of the program using an online platform. We needed to take a whole school approach because it's all primary school age children from prep all the way up to grade 6. We know that when children get to roughly grade 3, this is where we start to see a bit of a drop off of physical activity, but instilling these positive habits right from a young age and reinforcing them throughout primary school is imperative to see lifelong change and the development of positive, healthy lifestyles. Flexibility was a really big key point, and the program, we needed to ensure that the program could be tailored to cater for different schools, classrooms and teachers. And we needed to allow that flexibility because some teachers most naturally will incorporate physical activity into the school classroom day. Other teachers may be more hesitant, and there could be differences in skill sets or their preference towards different activities and their confidence in being able to administer different activities throughout the school day. And we know that teachers are the key gatekeepers for the promotion of programs in schools. So the Australian Joy of Moving program brings together the learnings and methodology from the original Joy of Moving program and extends this to have a specific emphasis on children realising the mind-body connection or the psychological aspects of moving. And this extends the original Joy of Moving methodology that focused on the life skills domain, as well as our focus on piloting the program in specialist schools in Victoria, where there's a real gap in interventions targeting movement for children with special needs in the classroom. So these are the 2 points where we're extending some of the work that was originally done in Italy and something that we hope that we can give back to the overall Joy of Moving program. So when we presented this to our advisory board, we had some really, really positive remarks and responses at the beginning, and a lot of it, you'll see the quotes on the slides and I'm not going to read them out, but they just talk to the importance of movement and how that can just be so fun for children and how teachers see that fitting in with their philosophy of the importance of movement. We also presented our program to the School Sports Victoria Advisory Board, whose key KPI is promoting movement in primary schools, and they were very encouraging of the program, and especially at sitting at the classroom teacher. So it's not a replacement of physical activity or motor skill development, but it's an addition to get kids active for the holistic and wellness benefits of movement. Okay, so now we're up to the Australian Joy of Moving program and what it is. So based on all of that information, the Australian Joy of Moving program is a classroom-based psychoeducational program that promotes the connection between moving, health and wellbeing through experiential learning using carefully designed movement tasks. And I just want to emphasise what I mean by experiential learning. So it's one thing to learn about something and to be given some education about it, and it's another thing to put something into practice and really reap the rewards of it and start to realise what it's doing for your health and wellbeing. And so we've ensured that we are providing opportunities through this program for children to experience some of that. So what is it all about? The aim is to increase children's motivation to be active by helping them to realise the mental health benefits of movement. There are 2 core principles or ideologies that are ingrained throughout the program. The first one is any movement is good movement. And this is really important because we're not talking about the elite athlete. We're talking about incorporating simple movements, and positive lifestyle habits. The second ideology is around moving helping us to feel good. So it's about making that mind-body connection link and thinking about when we experience different emotions, that how movement can sort of help us to get out of that state and what it does to our brain and our body in terms of our physiology. As I said, it's based on the International Joy of Moving program, and we're ensuring that it's inclusive of all children, irrespective of their fitness ability. So the two core ideologies, teachers are presented with 4 different moving categories to give teachers and children variety as to the types of movement tasks that they can incorporate. And some of the preliminary feedback that we're getting is the variety and the diversity is something that's really key in keeping kids engaged and enjoyment, and for them to keep enjoying the program as it goes along. And it also gives teachers just some examples that they can fall back on. The second ideology is the program focus on children making the connection between moving and feeling, and we call it the 4C, so feeling cheerful, connected to others, confident and calm. And so they're able to make this connection with different aspects of their wellbeing and different emotions that they might commonly experience at that age. So the program is implemented using 10-minute activity breaks in the classroom, and teachers are encouraged to administer the breaks for a minimum of 4 times a week for the duration of 8 weeks of a school term. And there are 2 components to the break. The first is a psychoeducational component where the children are presented with either a storybook if they're in prep to grade 2 or an animation if they're in grades 3 to 6 that talks about the mind-body connection and gives them a little bit of information to try and connect the dots between these 2. We had to ensure that what we were designing was developmentally appropriate, and so the storybooks are more appropriate for the younger kids and the animations have been designed for the older primary school levels. Then teachers are asked to administer an 8-minute movement activity, and they can choose which activity they would like to administer with their class. And so, there may be times where the class is really rowdy and a calming activity or a yoga type activity is more appropriate, or there may be other times where they want to stimulate the kids, so something a little bit more group-based or cheerful or more taxing can be administered. So we're leaving that flexibility to the teachers to ensure that we're, in harmony with what they're trying to achieve on their school day, as opposed to getting the kids revved up when they need them sort of to be focused. We've also provided teachers with blank activity cards so that they can incorporate some of their own activities that they've come up with, as well as ensuring that we have student voice. So this was brought up as one of the key KPIs for primary school teachers, to ensure that students had some autonomy, they were contributing to the program and making it their own, and everyone's going to be interpreting it differently, and that's okay. We're allowing that flexibility as long as it's within the structure of the program. And particularly for older children, we want to encourage this autonomy in the movements that they choose to do. So we've also in the manual for teachers included some inclusive tips. Most teachers are really good at doing this, but we just want to ensure, and this is taken from our All Play website, that they're mindful when they're doing physical activity with the class that they can change the activity, they can allow children to move in their own way. And I just want to touch a little bit on attitude and how this is so pivotal to how the class is going to react, how the teacher's going to model the behaviour, model the importance of physical activity, make it fun for the kids so that they really want to continue to do that. And we've found that when we've done our spot checks with different classroom teachers, that the way that the teacher presents the task and their enthusiasm and motivation is really, really important. And we're measuring this along with other aspects of the program, because we know that it's one of the key mediating variables when it comes to the successfulness of primary school programs. And also just for teachers to remember that they can have a backup activity if they try something and it's too demanding, or the class don't react in a way that they thought that they would. So now I'm going to move to the second gap in the literature that we hope to fill, and that's the focus on children with special needs. So the Deakin Child Study Centre has extensive research track record in working with children with special needs or children with neurodevelopmental disorders, and it's really important that whatever we develop is translatable not only to the mainstream school setting but also to the specialist school setting. So 7% of Australian children aged 0 to 17 years have a disability. And that equates to approximately 11,265 students in Victoria who attend a specialist school. Approximately 69% of them will have profound difficulties, and it's common for them to experience impairments associated with more than just one disability. So with psychological comorbidities being the most common for this most vulnerable group of children. So we took a little look at the literature to try and understand what active breaks or physical activity health promotion programs were out there in the specialist school setting. And it's evident that there's been very little done in this space. There are a number of classroom breaks such as Take 10 rolled out in mainstream schools. However, there really are fewer programs rolled out in the specialist schools. And this highlights a significant gap that could make a really significant contribution to the health and development of children with special needs. If you have a look at the 3 studies, only one had a substantial sample size of 100 and the other 2 were really small studies. And this is definitely a small group of studies to be done in this space. So we want to ensure that we go there and that we, whatever we develop can be rolled out for kids with special needs. And mostly, and more importantly, that we evaluate this. So this research will evaluate this psychological-based active breaks in specialist school classrooms, and it will for the first time conduct a pilot trial of the Australian Joy of Moving program in specialist schools. So we propose an in-depth analysis of the impact of the program in developing aspects of the whole child for children with special needs. We'll be conducting a series of pre-assessments before the rollout of the program, which will be approximately 4 to 6 weeks before the term starts, where we'll do a battery of different measures to look at aspects of the whole child. We will then administer the intervention to 3 specialist schools and then do a post-evaluation 4 to 6 weeks after to evaluate any impact of the program on different aspects of the child. The children who will be engaged in the program will be primary school aged, and we'll be asking both parents as well as doing some objective assessments based on the child as well. And so this methodology is a little bit more in-depth than what we're doing, a lighter touch, if you like, of analysis in the mainstream setting, but we really want to get into understanding some of the mechanisms for these children, understanding some of the changes and differences that we can make by implementing this program, and really contributing to the scant literature out there in this space of physical activity programs in specialist schools. So we're going to be using a variety of measures, and we've thought about trying to harmonise these measures as best we can with the International Joy of Moving program. So we're going to be looking at motor proficiency, which is assessed using the Movement Assessment Battery for Children, which is a standardised assessment battery looking at fine and gross motor performance, putting pegs into a pegboard, ball skills, balance. We're also interested in preferences for physical activity and trying to change children's attitudes or preference to want to be engaged in physical activity. Enjoyment is something that we really want to tap into. So the Joy of Moving methodology and program really emphasises the joy of moving, and so we want to ensure that we're getting kids engaged in fun tasks and they are really enjoying doing physical activity, so we'll be more likely to want to do it in the future. And also looking at if there's any difference in children's physical activity participation, not only within school but outside of school, so asking parents to comment on that. Okay, so this is just an overview of our research protocol, if you like, and it can be broken down into 6 stages. The first stage of our program was around understanding some of the barriers and facilitators to promoting engagement and participation of the Joy of Moving program in Australian primary schools. And we held our advisory board and also had a look at some of the literature out there for other programs to think about how we could position it and contextualise the Joy of Moving methodology and philosophy for the Victorian curriculum. We've then gone on to develop the program, which I spoke about before. And in term 3 of this year, we started our pilot of the program. So we've conducted our pre-assessment and rolled out the program to 2 mainstream primary schools. We've also had 2 control primary schools. And we're awaiting our post-intervention surveys, which are actually out there now for the next 4 to 6 weeks over the school holidays. And then based on this and going forward, we're going to be rolling out the program to the remaining of our mainstream schools and conducting an evaluation of the effectiveness of the program using a framework that looks at reach, how it was implemented, how teachers adopted it, the maintenance of the program, and also conducting that in-depth evaluation of the program in specialist schools using more objective measures pre and post to try and capture some of the change and some of the mediating or moderating variables that might contribute to changes in attitudes and physical activity for kids with special needs. We have partnered with School Sports Victoria, and they've been very supportive of the research and have really facilitated our engagement with schools, including the Principal Association, which is vital for this project. And to date, we haven't had too many difficulties in trying to recruit schools because it's something that they really want to include, and because it's short and brief and they can see value, we've had some really positive feedback, which is great. So we're 15 months into the project, and we've recruited 4 schools into our pilot and 75 teachers. We've reached 1,678 families, and 971 students are engaged in the Joy of Moving program. We hope to recruit 40 schools overall, so 6 specialist schools and 34 mainstream schools. And that's across the metropolitan and regional areas. So we're still currently recruiting. So if there's anyone on the line who's a teacher or a principal and who wants to become involved in the program, please contact us, because we'd be happy to include you in going forward. So lastly, I just want to talk about where to next. So the project will end in June 2021, and after that we're hoping to have a national rollout. So this pilot is just in Victoria, but we hope to be able to translate it to the other states within Australia, and also share some of our learnings back with the International Joy of Moving program and our collaborators back in Italy, so that we can really exchange some of the learnings and think about how we can both share from each other's expertise. But ultimately, we want to be able to provide teachers and schools with evidence-based materials to promote movement, and for this program to be the go-to program when thinking about developing aspects of the whole child through movement. Okay, so that's all from me.
Thank you so much, and what a great presentation. Sounds like a really, really good program. So it's now time for our question session with our audience today. So I'll leave a few minutes for you to type in your questions now. So we've got a first question come through already from Rachel. How do we go about presenting this program to teachers at a professional development session we're running next year in the Geelong region?
Oh, that sounds amazing. We can provide you with some material, if you like, advertising material to talk about the program, but also get in touch with us, because we might be able to come down to the professional development seminar and do a short presentation to try and get teachers and principals engaged. So that's a great question, and thanks for the support.
Fantastic. Okay, next question. Is this available to support children in early childhood programs?
So I'm guessing that's for like pre-primary and kindergarten. Yeah. At the moment, we are focused just in the primary school setting. Again, just trying to extend the work that was done with the original Joy of Moving program over in Italy and wanting to firstly replicate it here in Australia. But going forward, that's definitely a key area that we can go into and definitely hope to in the future.
Great. Next question from Kimberly. Do you have any good resources for families about the positive impacts of movement for children?
It's an interesting question because a lot of the work, as I've said, has been done in, I guess, the more research capacity, and a lot of the key findings are in the journals, if you like. And it's not until we get these programs out there and evaluated and available that we can really provide some of these key resources for the community. If you get in contact with me, I might be able to sort of fish out some specific resources after I have a quick look.
Sure, thank you, Nicole. Our next question from Kelly. How are you measuring the mental health of children?
Yeah, so we're using a commonly used measure called the Strengths and Difficulties Questionnaire, and that looks at student wellbeing and also breaks it down into 5 subscales. So we're looking at internalising or externalising disorders, pro-social behaviour and social functioning of kids. So wellbeing and mental wellbeing and psychological functioning are really broad concepts, and we're operationalising this using gold standard measures that have been used to tap into wellbeing for primary school age kids here in Australia.
Thank you. Our next question from Rebecca. Great presentation, and thank you so much for sharing. With respect to the national rollout, do you feel that the timeline may be a bit too lengthy? How do you see the further research between now and then, and whether that would require incorporation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is a couple of years away before we get our pilot together and we think about rolling it out internationally. But as with any research, we will be constantly going back to the literature, ensuring that we update our resources and are on top of the evidence so that anything that we provide going forward is at the cutting edge and keeps up with what's happening. But as with any research, it takes time to get from that idea stage and from the writing of a grant or an idea or a proposal to the testing and then to the evaluation and then to the translation.
Sure, thank you. And Rebecca's got a follow-up question. Do you see this as being leveraged outside the school settings at all? For example, private providers before and after school care?
Yeah, so definitely a lot of the learnings that the children can take and the teachers are sort of implementing in the classroom are generalisable outside of the classroom. And for the kids with special needs, where we're doing a deeper dive analysis, we are asking about parents, we are asking the parents about what activities the children are doing outside of school and if their attitudes towards physical activity and then wanting to engage in a local sporting club or community has changed after being involved in the program.
Thank you. Sure, thank you. Our next question from Judith. Thanks for your presentation. Just wondering if or how you've incorporated unstructured free play and the role of free play in children's development.
We definitely encourage the free play, but the program is structured just in terms of for research purposes and for evaluation. So it is structured, if you like, deliberate play based on the games and the activities that we provide to teachers. But any movement is good movement. So if teachers are promoting play at recess or at lunchtime and kids are getting active, that this is still a really good translational outcome, and we hope that it permeates to a whole school approach and not just within class time.
Thank you. All right, then I think we'll wrap up the webinar session today. A big thank you to our presenter today, Dr. Nicole Papadopoulos, for such a great presentation. And a very big thank you for our audience today for tuning in and your great questions today. Feel free to join us on social media where you can find information about more webinars and alumni resources. And if you would like to get in contact with Nicole, her email address is displayed on the screen, so feel free to drop her an email. Remember, you can submit feedback to us at deakinalumni@deakin.edu.au, and a recording of this presentation will be available on our website in the next few weeks. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.